Hello, listeners, and welcome to Shattering Superstructure, a podcast that breaks through the majority opinion and mainstream culture. I'm your host, Alex Arabian, a journalist who explores the value of art for the sake of art. In these interviews, in which I'll have occasional co-hosts, there will be no scoops, no juicy bits, and no hidden agendas, just a safe space in which one can think as one wishes and say what one thinks. And on that note, let's get to the episode. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to Shattering Superstructure, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary people. On this episode, we have David Arquette and Geoff Marslett, two extremely talented artists. Geoff's latest film, Quantum Cowboys, stars David Arquette, along with some other big names like Lily Gladstone. And it's a unique film that's showing at SF IndieFest at the Roxie Theater on the 6th. So if you're in town in San Francisco, get tickets to that. In this episode, we discuss many things. Not just Quantum Cowboys. We discuss the multiverse theory. We discuss, of course, David's legendary filmography, including his role as Dewey in the Scream franchise, and that death that happened in Scream 5, and possible ways that David Arquette can reprise his role as Dewey in an upcoming Scream sequel. You'll hear about David's unique pitch to Matt and Tyler, who have taken over the reins of the Scream franchise. We also discuss whether or not David would be willing to return. And I'll give you a hint. He gave me an emphatic yes. In any capacity, he'd love to return to the franchise. We also talk about ketamine treatment, which is relatively new in the mainstream. An extremely effective treatment for so many who struggle with depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, and anyone who's going through a mental health issue. There was a scene of a ketamine infusion treatment in David's documentary, You Cannot Kill David Arquette. We discuss what it was like including that scene and sharing that vulnerable side of his life to the public, and how it destigmatizes these types of mental health issues that people tend to grow tepid when it's talked about in the public. But really, the goal there was to do that very thing, try and destigmatize mental health issues and the various treatments that are available. Without further ado, here's the episode. Thanks for listening. First of all, incredible film. That was really something special, I thought.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I feel like not everyone's going to love the film, but at the very least, it's a film that people haven't seen before. So if someone's looking to see something new, we definitely delivered on that. So
yeah, and animation opens so many more narrative doors, I feel like, right?
Yeah, we would have never been able to make this film. I mean, we could have made something with that script, but it would not have been this film without animation. You know, part of the goal of the structure was to give people a multi-universe, a multi-worlds film where we didn't have you watch the characters go into multiple universes, but tried instead to take the audience and make them watch one consistent character narrative from different universes. And I think without being able to change the medium in the way that animation let us do, you couldn't build that type of structure.
Right. Yeah. I loved how it was done. And you've got 12 different animation styles.
Yeah, when people ask me, I either say 12 or 15. Each animation style represents a different character's point of view or a different instance of a character's point of view. And there are 15 different ones, but really 3 of those are types of rotoscoping. So 12 types of animation, one of them has 3 subtypes. If this was a textbook quiz, it would look something like that.
Okay. And, you know, you've worked on some great shorts, but I think this is your sophomore narrative directorial.
It's actually my third. It's my third
Okay.
directorial. So there was Mars, and then Loves Her Gun, and then this one. Yeah.
Got it. What was the impetus of this project? I know you wanted to tell us, you know, kind of a multiverse story, but there's a lot of blending genres. Yeah.
There is a lot. You know, as I get older, I sometimes think maybe I should rethink this strategy, but you know, I enjoy making films because I like making something that I haven't already seen, making something maybe no one else is trying to do, maybe no one else even wants to do. That, you know, that's a different path than sometimes a Hollywood film where you're working pretty hard to refine and prove sort of tried and true narratives most of the time, because they are great to watch. I mean, I love watching more expensive Hollywood films as well, but indie film suffers from the lack of resources and support sometimes, but the gain that you get is a freedom to tell different kinds of stories. So in this case, the different kind of story I was really interested in looking at was twofold. One was I'd been a physicist before I was a filmmaker, and I got I'd say a little frustrated watching. They're great, but watching even, you know, it's going to win all the Academy Awards, but even watching Everything Ever All at Once, watching a Doctor Strange, the presentation of multiverse theory there is just that everything is possible and you can have an infinite number of characters, so there are kind of no rules in your storytelling. I totally love the appeal of that. I see why that's done, but it's very far from what Wheeler and Everett originally wrote as the multi-worlds theory. You know, that the idea of the multi-worlds theory has a lot more to do with like Heisenberg uncertainty and the possibility of these things existing and them extinguishing other possibilities. So this was my attempt to say, hey, cinema is actually a really cool medium to show an abstract concept, like the real concept of many worlds. So that was part of the impetus. And then the other thing is, I love Westerns. I grew up in the West, and there was definitely a side of this story when Howe and I were writing the original ideas down to re-envision the Western, to say that Western tropes, Western cliches, awesome Western movies have honestly replaced actual history for most of the worlds. Most of the world sees a guy from California in the deserts of southern Spain with guns listening to Italian music, and that's what they think the American West was, you know, because that's what we've seen. And the American West was far more diverse. It was far more strange. It was far more built by the everyday people that weren't shooting each other than it was by the people that were shooting each other. The music didn't sound like Ennio Morricone. As much as I love Ennio Morricone, it sounded like untuned banjos and broken instruments, and it, you know, sounded probably more like Sonic Youth than it sounded like Ennio Morricone. And I kind of wanted to present a world where we got to see that version of the West. And then I love working with really interesting actors and really interesting human beings, saying stuff we might not normally hear people say. That's kind of where this came from. Like David, he got to say a lot of stuff that he probably wouldn't normally say.
Yeah. And so, David, what drew you to this project? Was it a lot of those elements?
Yeah, I mean, Geoff had such this whole experience has been kind of like asking him for direction and understanding, like, where are we, what's this world like? Still wrapping my head around it. I love how thought-provoking it is. And then it was an opportunity to work with Frank Mosley, who we had this great, like, you know, buddy thing going, and and I love the Western kind of world. There's something inside me that one of my ancestors must have experienced some of it, so that it's in me. Like, I don't know, there's something I feel very close to. But in the same way, they were always the ones that were probably joking around quite a bit back then.
Yeah.
I have to give you a huge compliment, David, that you always play characters with this wonderful, approachable humor that just come through, whether it's things like Dewey, that no matter how big or small the role is, you can't help but love that character. And I knew that was in you just from watching so much of your work. But when you came and did this, you also have this great, and maybe that is that some part of your ancestry in the West there, you have this great way of playing the grit that you brought to that character. So he is still gruff, a little scary, but you still kind of want to hug him. There, you walk that line of making him lovable without making him seem unthreatening. And I don't know, it was really good. I was really impressed.
Thank you, buddy. I thought it was fun with Frank that he kind of was even sort of more unwound than me. He's lost more marbles, and it was a fun opportunity to be kind of a little bit of the straight man in the situation, or the hard ass, and he's more of the goofball, which was fun. And also Lily's character in the film just is so awesome. She's just such the hero, Western heroes. It's such a beautiful message.
I love the
performance.
Yeah, and they come to her. I think when they first start watching the movie, they're waiting for John's character or Kiowa's character to sort of be what Lily's character really is, whichever one could be the most of a hero, and it's her who shows part way through. I like that bait and switch on the audience, and Lily obviously, the whole world I think is starting to recognize it, but she's such an amazing performer that she can be that mix of Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi at the same time that walks into this movie. And
amazing. Yeah.
That's a great comparison. Yeah. She is that mixture in this for sure. And it's definitely a reflection of your range, Geoff. I mean, I think you filmed just about every genre, Westerns, sci-fi, thrillers, a bit of horror, enthralling drama.
Yeah.
What's the film that got you into movies, or maybe if there's a genre?
Yeah, I think, like I said,
Westerns.
They're the ones that pulled me in just from a viewer and enjoyment. And I think the very first movie I saw at the theaters, I think I was 3 years old when Star Wars came out, and I watched that, and I loved the magic worlds, and that was just as a kid, those are the toys I loved, everything. I loved the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of the Westerns from the late 60s I really got addicted to as a young person. But from a making standpoint, I think it was somewhere in high school when I started going to the Inwood Theater in Dallas and watching indie films. Watching Slacker was a big influence on me, and part of why I started my career and went down to work in Austin, seeing Linklater make this film that just didn't make sense in the context of other films. David Byrne, who's only really directed one movie, is from the Talking Heads, but his movie True Stories is probably one of the giant influences. Jim Jarmusch, films like Border Radio, these films that in their own way defy narratives and to some degree defy classic 3-act structure. I would argue they still very much have a 3-act structure, but seeing people do something that Hal Hartley and all these films, Alison Anders, the film might not work on every single level, but it asks so many questions that when it does stumble, it's at least super interesting stumbles. I think that's what made me, I think as a person, I'm an interesting stumble. That's what attracted me to making something. I want to go out and really swing for the fences on this and get it out there sometimes. And sometimes if I don't, at the very least, the not getting there is really something you might want to watch 4 or 5 times and figure out how it did or didn't work. And that attracted me to making movies. So that's kind of why I make the weird ones that I do make. The same thing that attracted me before this into science, because science is a lot the same. Physics is missing and messing up a lot and grasping tiny bits of truth here and there. But when you do grasp that tiny bit of truth, it's sort of world changing within your little world. And I like that.
Wow. That's so cool. I have a random question, but is there a story structure like in the hero's journey, but it's constant build up, crash, build up, crash, build up, crash?
But yeah, like the roller coaster model. I think
is there
I would
I'm
argue,
working on something now that it just seems like we keep like burning, like we
in a way
try
that's
really
great.
hard.
I mean, I think the trick is if you were to really take like the classic textbook, it's like, but what you try to do is say you build up and you burn, and the next time you build up a little higher and burn a little harder, and then you do it again, you build a little harder until you can do this until you finally get to the last one and you figure out, does my character learn anything from these 5 crashes, and then does that leave them here, or do they learn nothing from it and that leaves them further down than any of the previous crashes? You know, those are the 2 directions you can drive the car, and it's you know, where do you crash, which
That's cool. I love that. Thank you for that. Sorry, it didn't mean to.
No, I want to read it now. I want to see where you're crashing on this one.
Oh god, it's pretty much the whole Bozo experience. It's just been this really fun, wild ride. But
well, this is another reason, like bringing David into this. You know, someone who, you know, you built a wrestling career. You built, you know, a career acting. You're building a clowning career. I feel like there's a little kindred spirit here in that David tries stuff that, sure, if someone pulled out a notebook and said, you know, what should David Arquette do next with his career? No one wrote down Bozo the Clown. That wasn't something. But you did it because, you know, because
I'm living my own multiverse.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, to that point, it's like, you know, I think on top of a lot of coming of age 80s films, David, I grew up on Dewey and Scream, you know, Rob and Never Been Kissed.
Yeah.
Gordy and Ready to Rumble, you know, Chris and the Eight-Legged Freaks. I mean, you're a big artistic inspiration for me.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are all fun.
Of course. And then, you know, lately, you know, you still got Bone Tomahawk Spree and You Cannot Kill David Arquette, which is like one of the best documentaries I think
thanks, man.
I've ever seen. It was incredible.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Amazing doc. I didn't get to see it until after we shot Quantum Cowboys, but then I got to watch the doc, David, and it's one of the best documentaries I've seen on why people do what they do, and it is really great. So feel really good.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. You know, and suffice it to say, Dewey's death and Scream 5, it definitely made me cry. You know, he's the underdog. He's the everyman. Unabashedly vulnerable, kind, but he's gone through so many tragedies, but no matter how many tragedies he's been through, he keeps moving forward, and that's what I love about the character. He's so relatable. So I mean, yeah, what was your, when you read the script, I think Matt and Tyler mentioned that you were open to the idea of Dewey dying, especially from a narrative standpoint. What were your initial reactions?
They hadn't told me, so when I read it, I was like, at the beginning, I was reading, I was like, oh, Dewey's got a good role in this one, because you never know, like, and then it was like, oh, that's why. And I had to put the script down and be like, oh. But I get it, like the emotionally kind of crushing the audience or whatever, you know, all that. I don't know. It was sad though. It's hard seeing the new ones come out and not being a part of I don't know. You're just kind of not invited to the party. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, oh, well, wish you guys the best. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to watch it. I'm gonna be like,
yeah.
So,
I mean, as an audience member, I'm going to feel the same way. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I watching this now? There's no more Dewey.
No, I hope it does well. But
good news.
I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. They're talented, super talented.
We did kill you, I mean, in Quantum Cowboys, but if we ever get to make the sequel, you're still actually one of the 2 leads in the sequel.
Good.
The great thing in our universe is you can keep getting killed, and it doesn't mean you're not coming back to the party.
Right.
That's what I keep telling them. I've pitched all these ideas, these wild ideas. He was the chief of police. If you're gonna cover something up, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
He's got the connections.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's basically canon that Stu survived supposedly Scream 1, and I know in the original Scream 3 script he was supposed to be the mastermind behind all the murders. And so, and then you have Kirby surviving now in Scream 6. So I'm holding out the hope that Dewey isn't dead. You know, maybe I'm in denial. Maybe I don't know. But I really think that it's plausible for you to come back from a narrative standpoint. They didn't technically show you dead. They only showed a body bag. So yeah. What were some of your pitches to try to come back?
Oh, that David Arquette comes back as Dewey and Stab.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a different part. It's like
That would also be pretty great.
yeah.
That's some inspired casting in Stab.
But no, that was David Schwimmer played that role. So
Yeah.
such a weird world.
Yeah, no, there could have been like a recast, some fake controversy, Stab controversy. Yeah. And
Well,
you,
it's always been part of this meta film. Like, there's all these worlds that they really could kind of like explore more, I think, in a, you know, with technology going where with deep fakes, with all this kind of world. That's because like even the in Scream 4, the streaming, that idea, they made it all clunky with like some headpiece or something. But I was one of the people behind the pitch of that, which was like that people are starting to document their world. So what if they, you know, it was kind of before streaming was like so readily available to people. So
yeah,
so if you like think on terms of what's going to be big, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, like they just said Singularity is supposed to hit in 7 years. I just saw. It's like, what? Yeah, Singularity. It's like computers become smarter than us. I don't know.
Jesus. Well, I
It's
wonder.
great to be Gen X. We started before they were computers, and we get to see them take over.
I know.
We got the full spectrum.
We totally got the weird. We got the combo of all those sort of.
I know.
Old and new. We're like,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's, I don't know. I always think of it as like we're these computers.
Yeah.
We're like these really the tabletop big old IBMs and Macs that they originally made, the whole slow dial up. And then these new kids are little handheld computers that
This is more
super
powerful by
quantum
far than-
computers.
Yeah. It changed.
Yeah.
Their speed, even like everything. It's also wild. It's time's rapidly getting faster and faster.
It really is. I went. Was there a year that Kurzweil predicted the singularity would happen, or is that?
I think it's slid a little bit. I think at one time it was like 23 or 24, but it's a little later now. But it's been, yeah.
Okay. That's just wow. Well, I mean, that's crazy. But
I'm ready for UFOs.
Yeah.
UFOs.
Yes.
UFOs.
Me too. Yeah. Let's.
At this point, I would just be like, okay, like I don't know. It feels like it would turn the world into like now the world is Burning Man. Like this big spaceship and it's just blasting the best music.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Why
like
not?
You guys have to chill.
Yeah. Yeah. UFOs, the final frontier. Speaking of Westerns. Yeah. And speaking of Scream 4, you know, you've worked with Wes Craven more than I think most actors ever have. Maybe Heather Langenkamp probably beats you out, but what was it like to watch him work? I've always been a fan of his.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was just such a kind, generous guy. Knew exactly what he wanted. Had like everything sort of crossed and dotted, and was just really kind of got people. Like he got me in a way that not a lot of sort of Hollywood people do, in a way. You know what I mean? That's also why I love indie movies. There's something about the crews and the actors and the directors and the writers and the kind of family atmosphere of it. But Wes sort of had that on a big film scale, and he was a professor, you know what I mean? Just like Geoff, and just a teacher, and a problem solver, and a lover of art and music, and it really came across, and all of the things. He also had his sort of eye out to a lot of different kind of anime and Korean filmmaking, and all these sort of things that are starting to catch on now. But he was watching those, like Scream 4. I think I saw him watching anime.
Wow.
For
it's that world. I mean, I think it makes those movies so interesting. It is that world building and not just sticking to that genre. I mean, Scream itself was a lot more different than everything else was out there when it came out. I mean, a lot of people have emulated some of those, and it's become its own sort of genre of melding those. But he was making something that was different than what other people were offering in horror. It had a meta thing to it. It had a strange commentary to it. So it is. I agree. He wasn't in the narrow lane of that genre by any stretch.
Yeah, and I've looked back on Scream 3, which was always my least favorite, and then seeing one of the later nightmares that he did, where it's behind the scenes thing. There's something really cool that he was playing with in those worlds, by having Jay and Silent Bob, like it's just weird, like mashup worlds.
Yeah. And Geoff, you've dipped your toes in the horror and thriller genre. Was Wes Craven ever an influence for you at some point?
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, I don't watch a lot of horror, and the horror I watch tends to be older. And by older, I think I mean like mid 90s and back. So not old necessarily. Like, I mean, I do watch those, but not like Lon Chaney old, though I watch those too, but old like 90s and back. And largely I think that Wes Craven era, that type of horror where a lot of, I mean, even watching something like Alien, watching movies where the horror is based in a large part on conception, on these strange, how the morality of the world balances itself out. And some of more modern horror, I think, has drifted towards just flat out terrifying you, grossing you out, putting people into impossible situations and then letting them play out in ways that people like to say it's shocking, or you can't unsee it, or these kinds of things. And that's for a different audience than me. I don't really make films that I wouldn't want to watch. And I don't know, in my given day, I don't necessarily need to sit for an hour and a half in a place I just want to get out of and watch horrible things happen to people. I enjoy the world of horror, where the horror is talking about what it means to be an outsider in society, what it means to be repercussions of actions of these things set up. And I think Wes Craven certainly built that type of horror, which is a very different thing. I think the origins of horror as a genre weren't just to scare you. The origins, if we go back and look at Frankenstein, if we look at Dracula, the origins were to say something about society. They had more in common with the Twilight Zone, I think, than they do with some of the scare factor stuff we now get. And cinema is such an amazing medium that you can make some things that are really terrifying, but I'm just not sure that that's where I want to go. And it's certainly not what I'm looking to necessarily make. The next film I'm trying to make, possibly come this next fall, is actually a horror film, a werewolf western that I'm almost finished writing to shoot down in southern Spain. Speaking of where westerns made, in that same town, and actually in the exact same set where A Fistful of Dollars and stuff was made. But if I get to make it, I mean, I want people to be a little scared, but it's also really going to be a lot about its ideas about what it means going from Americans moving south of the border and kind of taking advantage of Mexico. It's going to be things about the way soldiers were treated in the Civil War. There's going to be things beyond, is the werewolf scary, if it works. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And then of course, Quantum Cowboys 2 possibly on the horizon as well.
I very much hope so. I talked to Lily night before Monday night. I talked to Lily. I should say text. She's out at Sundance with her new film Fancy Dance, which is getting great reviews.
Right. Yeah.
And she, of course, got Killers of the Flower Moon coming out later this year. But I think, as long as we get to do this, Lily's going to come down to Tucson with Hal and I and join us as a third writer on the sequels, I think, which will be
that's awesome.
So, so it should be really, really exciting. And I do hope we get to make them. And, the second one is all about, David, it's about you and Frank. It's all how we all got stuck. So I hope we get to make it.
Yeah, totally.
Me too. And David, if I may be vulnerable here for a second, I did ketamine treatments last year, and I'm still doing some more spaced out maintenance, I guess, infusions at the clinic that I go to, but it's really helped me. I've found, especially in combination with therapy. That scene in your documentary really, really affected me. And I thought it was amazing to include because it helps destigmatize, mental health issues. And ketamine can help with so many different things. What was it like showing that side of you and filming that scene and including it in the doc?
It was kind of hard to include. My wife kind of kicked me out of the editing room at one point, but we did put it in for that reason. And it was sort of pre COVID, and everybody kind of like, oh shit, we all have anxiety and depression and aspects of it, or just uncertainty and fear of the future. So but yeah, I think it's important to talk about, and it's not easy. Like the whole thing, it's no matter who knows what people are going through, but it's just life in general. You just have to kind of like, I've found the most helpful for me is, and it's hard to like keep it consistent, but is exercise and creativity, like doing something like physically creative, or even cooking, or whatever it is that you find joy and find like some activity that's just creative. And then exercise, if you can do that like 5 times a week, you're really can and get it's just helped my mental sort of well-being.
Likewise. Yeah, no, I run a lot, and it
sleep, eating and sleeping really better, sleeping better and eating better. Those are the other ones.
Right.
And reading.
Yeah.
Trying to read, or even
enriching
audio book or something.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. Thanks for sharing that. So I think that going back to Quantum Cowboys, I think, Geoff, you mentioned that there's this lovability to such a rough character, rough around the edges at least, but David manages to, and I'm sure this was in the script, but infuse a lot of comedy into it. And I think that's why we like the character. What were the initial conversations like? Character archetypes, inspirations, what you wanted to sort of convey, with David and David with Geoff.
I mean, from the beginning, I don't really write villains. I don't feel like the world, maybe every once in a while it does, but short of someone who's just completely unhinged, villains are just someone who has prioritized their own well-being, their own desires, their own goals over other people to a point that the rest of the world sees them as a villain. And I'm not saying that's not bad, but I think when a villain is just a bad guy, it doesn't necessarily make sense, and it doesn't resonate that much in a real plot. So, these characters, one of the reasons the sequel is about them. So I wanted both Frank and David, though they are the quote unquote bad guys of the movie, they're not villains. They're not just evil people that, just want to destroy our lead characters. So I think in approaching it, it was a hard role, I think, for both of them, because I had to say, here you have a character, and your character, I don't want it to be one-dimensional. I don't want it to be just a bad guy that pulls a gun on them for no reason, which we sometimes see in Westerns. There's like the hired gun that terrorizes the city, or the town, and they don't really quite know why they terrorize the town. Why don't they just quit that job? Who knows? We didn't want that out of those characters, but I also had to tell them that in the scope of this script, we also don't ever show on the screen why you are how you are. So in a way, I was like, Frank and David, the two of you have to go in and be the villains, be the antagonist, but do it in a way that's not just a cardboard villain, but we're also not going to reveal why you do what you do. So it was a big ask for those two actors. And in casting, it was hard because I knew we had to get some people that could really do it. And I loved David's work, and I knew Frank really well. So I kind of knew, I was like, I know Frank can pull this off. I need to find the person that goes with Frank. So largely in then the direction to the two of them is I wanted them to build that rapport. I told them, I want you to feel like the buddy heroes of your own film for the scenes that you're in here. And it's one of the things that was great with the scenes at the bar is it's a chance for them not to be out terrorizing Lily and John and Kiowa. It's a scene for them to just be having a drink and reminiscing a little bit on how they got stuck where they got stuck. And I don't know, David, for you if it helped or not, but I felt like those scenes really helped us see these two characters as genuinely friends. And
yeah, totally. It really did. There was elements of improv and moments of just sort of discovering it. We didn't know that there was, there was kind of a feeling of a hierarchy, but it kind of developed.
Yeah.
And made Frank be the sort of loose cannon, and it all just kind of organically happened. I think that happens a lot when you do cast where people's chemistry works.
And y'all really did. I mean, there's a moment in the campfire scene where David, when the masked man, I will try not to give things away for people who might watch this before they watch the movie, but when the masked man pulls the gun on David's character on Colfax. And I think that's when you really get to see that character of Colfax that David plays still has a foot in sanity that Frank's character Depew doesn't. When you're like, just kill us, that's what I would do. There's a side where instead of fighting for himself, he's like, that moment of sympathy, like y'all are stuck in this stupid loop as well. Like, I get it. I get how hard this is on you all as well. And I love the rapport you get with John, who plays Bruno. The two of you are talking and he brings you the blanket, and though you're on opposite sides, you're opponents of one another. There's this great way in which neither of the two of you is particularly aggressive towards the other one. You both realize you're stuck in the same trap. And I think I love that about David's portrayal of this character, because we really get a character that says he's problematic, he's unhinged, but he's still got a foot in a world where he, even more than Bruno, I think at that point we realize Colfax's character kind of sees what's going on, and you have a better perspective on what Bruno's doing than even he does. And I thought you did that really well, and at the same time got a laugh. So again, David walked that line of being kind of this wise old character who's also like, your plan's stupid. And you're right, his plan is stupid. Like you're calling him out on exactly what's wrong because you see the bigger picture in there. And I don't even know how well I communicated that to David and Frank when they were doing it, but they delivered. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Speaking of that scene with Bruno, I love when he brings in the whiskey and you just tell him with your face without saying like, well, my hands are tied up, how am I supposed to drink this? Like I got a big laugh out of that.
Cool. John Way's an amazing actor. He's really talented. I'm excited to see what he does in the future.
Yeah, me too. He really and that scene particularly, the two, I mean, for me, the campfire scene is the longest scene in the movie, and it's still my favorite. All five of the principals are in that sequence, and you all are so good off of one another as that thing plays out. I love that sequence. So
Yeah. David, if you did get the call from Matt and Tyler or whoever takes the next reins of the Scream franchise, would you consider returning?
Absolutely. That'd be amazing. I love playing that character. Just being part of those films. I would be a director's assistant. Something about being part of the experience that's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could imagine it. It seems like everyone became so close throughout those movies and genuinely liked each other. And what's next for the both of you? I guess starting with David, I know you've got Hot Pink with the incomparable Elizabeth Holm, and you're reuniting with Sarah Michelle Gellar, even though you didn't share.
Yeah, that was a pilot that didn't get picked up, so that won't
okay.
be anywhere. But I did do a film called I have a series coming out called Mrs. Davis.
Oh, okay. Mrs.
Which
Davis.
is pretty interesting, but it's pretty like they haven't shared much about it. So I think they want to surprise the world with it. It should be out in March. It's on Peacock.
Got it. And Geoff, I know you've mentioned your next film. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I've kept quite a few irons going. So I'll give a shout out to some fun collaborators, but Izzy Schill's film Going Nowhere, it's an ensemble cast, but I play one of the leads in that. So I got a film as an actor. I just got a message from her saying they got picked up, but I don't know the details. So I can't tell you when it's coming out, but it's called Going Nowhere. And I get to play a charming loser. So that's right up my wheelhouse. So I got one film coming out as an actor. I produced a film for Skinner Myers called Before You Fade Away Into Nothing. It's a low budget 35 millimeter piece starring Skinner and Nikon. And I produced it. I'm also doing all the color correct and the visual effects on it now. But we dragged 35 millimeter cameras up to 13,000 feet in the mountains and shot all on black and white and did it on essentially no budget. It's a great film. I think we're premiering in Europe this summer, probably. I think that's a likelihood. So that'll come out. And then I'm finishing up the 2 scripts for the sequels of this and hopefully shooting a werewolf film in the fall. That's probably my next 3 things queued up, unless something sneaks in and changes that. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Oh yeah, I love to hear that. I love to. It's almost wore the same shirt to this.
I know exactly.
But,
I should have cracked out a clown T-shirt to put on under this, and I would have been like the nexus of you two. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
And your answers. It was great speaking with both of you.
Really fun, and thanks for the support. This is a low budget. Films are always hard to get out there in the world, and I think getting harder every year with the amount of competition there is, the number of films. So every time we get coverage, certainly appreciate it, because I do think when this finds its right audiences, they really love it, and I just have to convince people to get in the theater. So hopefully I'll see some people at the Roxie on the 5th or 6th. It's 5th or 6th. I should know.
Yeah.
Monday. This coming up. It's Monday, the 5th or 6th of February. We're playing. So
amazing. And the Roxie's such a great theater. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Well, best of luck with, the rest of the press junket and the premiere and all your future projects. And thanks again for joining me on this, this podcast. And
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, guys. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See you in a few minutes, David.
Bye. And that's a wrap, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary people. Thanks for listening to Shattering Superstructure. This was a great episode with Geoff Marslett and David Arquette. And keep an eye out for upcoming episodes in the next couple weeks. We've got Omid Arabian. Yeah, he shares the same last name as me. He's a published author who translates the poet Rumi from Farsi to English. in a much more accurate way. And he has actually a center called Universal in LA that teaches Rumi and mysticism to both children and adults. And then we have Sev Ohanian, who is a prominent producer, and we talk about his career and how he broke into the industry and his already legendary filmography. So his latest film coming out is Missing, which is the sequel to Searching, and he has an upcoming documentary which he produced about Steph Curry. Yes, go Warriors, and we shall see you next time. This is Alex signing off.